Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Overcomer's Journey podcast. And tonight we have an exciting guest, and I want him to be honored by the presentation of our pastor, Larry McDonald, to share who he is before we actually get started. If you would.
Thank you so much, James. We have the pleasure as well as the honor to have a good friend of mine. We have been knowing each other since around 1981, 82. He was the pastor of Agape Christian Fellowship in Toledo, Ohio, and I was a student at Bowling Green State University in Bowling Green, Ohio, and we used to go back and forth to his church. Great teacher, great teacher. And he's had some experiences that would have probably rocked my world, but I've listened to him because he's the son of a preacher, his brother's a preacher, and he's a preacher, and has some extraordinary children. I've watched them grow up, and I watched them become great people. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're with us tonight, you're in for a treat to listen to a mentor, a friend, as well as a colleague, the Reverend Dr. Jerry Williams.
And, sir, we had the opportunity to hear a few things about you before we actually went live tonight. And as I shared with you, I've heard about you through various channels in my lifetime. And I was thinking it's always good not to be seen sometimes and be a distraction. And you can't say that because I remember that crazy man right there. So that's good. But I've heard wonderful things about you for many, many years. This is the first time I had the opportunity to kind of sit face to face, and I'm super excited about your experiences that you may share with our audience tonight. So here on the podcast, we just let it kind of all hang out. We talk about youth, the things that they're going through, our walk with Jesus. I mean, troubling times, and how you handled those things, and then we kind of want to hear your take on current events. So we're going to move around and talk about various topics. And if you would, just share what you're doing with your time right now so that the audience will know what you're doing and how people can find you and support you too.
Well, thank you very much, James. Right now, I am retired from being a local church senior pastor.
Okay.
However, I'm very engaged and very busy. I've been a missionary, broadcasting on radio. I'm still doing some television and doing a YouTube show weekly.
Okay.
And even though I'm retired, it seems like I'm more busy now than I was before I was retired. But I've been doing this ministry for 50 years.
50 years. Wow.
This year's 50 years.
Okay.
And, of course, the last church I pastored, Agape Word Fellowship in Raleigh, here in Raleigh, I was there for 25 years. And so what I'm doing now is just trying to find my way in this new ministry and walking down this new path that I believe God has set before me. But I'm still very much engaged in ministry and trying to advance the kingdom of God.
Okay. If you could, I mean, when you talk about 50 years, that's, some people may say that's a long time. Some people say that's short. But the first 10 years of ministry and the last 10 years of ministry, is there a difference in that first group of 10 compared to where we are now before you kind of retire? What's the difference? Is there anything?
Well,
the way people are in the times?
No, I think people are the same everywhere, but I think the first 10 years for me was really a learning process. It was a learning curve.
Okay.
And of course, there were more challenges being a young minister the first 10 years versus the last 10 years where you've got some experience under your belt and you've learned a lot of things. You learn not only from your successes, but you learn from your failures.
Mm-hmm.
And so the last 10 years was a lot easier than the first 10 years.
Than the first 10 years.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Pastor?
Tell us a little bit about those first years that you started the church up in Toledo.
Okay, well, after I left law school, I went to law school in Minnesota. And after I left law school, I returned to Toledo to fulfill the call of God on my life And in 1977, I opened my first church. I consider myself a local church entrepreneur because I've planted several churches.
Mm-hmm.
So I opened my first church, and even though the first church I opened, I began with my wife, 2 babies in diapers, but there's some background behind that, and that is I was holding evangelistic services in a rented Baptist church on Fridays and Sunday nights. Had a crowd of people coming, but I thought that when I decided that I was going to step out and plant my own church, the reasonable thing to do and the honorable thing to do was to do it without other people's members from other local churches.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why we started with just my wife and my baby and my 2 babies in diapers. But the church grew very quickly, and we went from one rented location in a couple of years to buying a first church edifice that would seat 400 parishioners.
Okay.
And then after a couple of years doing that, God blessed us to purchase a shopping center.
Mm-hmm.
And with the shopping center, we had several commercial tenants, and we situated our church in a former A&P grocery store building.
Okay.
And you may be too young to know what an A&P grocery store is.
No, I know what that is.
He from Franklin County.
14,000 square feet.
Yeah.
We went and remodeled that and converted it into a sanctuary with offices,
Okay.
children's church, nursery. And this is when I met Pastor Larry. And,
Okay.
and this is when I believe you're in graduate school at that
Yes.
time. And he and others from Bowling Green State University would come, be part of the congregation. And it was at that location. And so from the shopping center thing, then we entered an agreement to purchase a seminary.
Mm-hmm.
And we did not fulfill that agreement because the developers in whom we're buying the seminary from, they decided that they want to put a commercial shopping strip in front of us, and essentially it would have hit us.
Mm-hmm.
And the seminary was situated on the second busiest corner in Toledo, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And so we thought that there would be great visibility and it would be a great location, but the developer didn't tell us about his other plans
Mm-hmm.
to put a commercial shopping strip in front of us. And then when he came out and cut the cross off the steeple of the church, off the chapel,
Oh,
he cut
cut
the
it
cross
off.
off the steeple of the chapel, we knew that we weren't going to go through with that agreement.
absolutely not.
And so these are the kind of things I've done as a local church entrepreneur.
Okay. And you have discussed that you do a lot of traveling outside the U.S.
I do.
And can you share what that involves?
Well, since 1983, I've been traveling to Africa. My first trip to Africa was a mission to Ghana,
Okay.
and I was part of a missionary team at that time, a team of about 5 people, and my assignment was to teach in the villages in the afternoon, and then the leader of the team preached the large crusades at night.
Mm-hmm.
And something very interesting happened there, and I knew that was God's way of showing me that this is what He's called me to do. Well, everybody in the team got sick with malaria except for me.
Okay.
Everybody except for me. And so I had to preach in the crusades in the evening. I wasn't supposed to. They hadn't planned for me to,
Okay.
but they had nobody available but me.
Okay.
And so I was preaching crusades at night before thousands of people, and I just knew that's something God had called me to do. So ever since 1983, I've been going to African countries, but I also went to Panama in 1985,
Mm-hmm.
and we ministered there in the Darien jungle to the Chocoi Indians.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was the most difficult in terms of conditions missionary trip I've ever been on, because we were actually in the jungle
Okay.
where there were panthers and tigers. Even though we didn't see any directly, we saw their footprints
Right.
in our campsite when we would wake up in the morning. But there was a detachment of U.S. Army soldiers that actually escorted us out to this spot in the jungle,
Mm-hmm.
and they stayed with us for several days. And so we slept in army tents, on army cots, and so we were roughing it.
Yeah.
We were really roughing it, and that's the most difficult in terms of conditions on any missionary trip I've been on. Normally, when I go to Africa, I am in some kind of hotel,
Right.
and then we'll drive out to a village or to a crusade site or to an orphanage,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the kind of thing we've been doing.
Wow, that sounds pretty busy still.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So we want to focus a little bit on young people. You know, we have young people that watch this show, and many times we talk about, you know, that the journey in life is challenging, and even though some of us, you know, reach various levels of success, we share that it wasn't always that way. So we want them to know that you have to stay at it. So in your journey, you know, from a young man, you know, we're gonna go back beyond 1983. You know, have there been low points, if any, as a young man, you know, in teenage years, that did you know what you wanted to do at that point, or was it later on in your 20s? And did you hit any rough spots? And what was that like? And how did you stay focused? How did you stay on track?
Well, always thought I knew what I wanted to do,
Right.
but it would change.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I thought I always wanted to be an attorney.
Okay.
Growing up in the inner city of Toledo, Ohio, I thought that would be my ticket out to success, is to go to law school, become an attorney. But I got I got sidetracked in college. When I was in college, I was struggling in an English course,
Mm-hmm.
and my English professor told me forget about it. He said you'll never be admitted to law school.
Mm.
And so I forgot about my law school dream at that time. Okay, and so that was a low period for me because I was told I wasn't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I became a psychology major while I was in college, and so I got very, very much involved with psychology.
Okay.
I thought I would go on to grad school and become a psychologist, and but when I graduated from college, I needed to make some money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, been roughing it I actually got the 4-year program in 3 years.
Okay.
So I've been roughing it for 3 years. So I said I want to stop, just pause and make some money.
Right.
So I took a job with IBM,
Okay.
in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And while I was there in IBM, and I had great success with IBM, but while I was there, a friend of my brother, and my brother was a All-American football player at the University of Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
He had a friend who was an attorney, and he had talked about his little brother to his friend.
Okay.
He said, my brother used to want to be an attorney, but he gave up on his dream.
Okay.
So his attorney friend actually called me while I was an employee at IBM, and he said, you don't have to give up on your dreams. He said, I think you should apply.
Okay.
And he said, I think you should keep searching and reaching for that dream. Don't give up, and I'll do everything I can to help you. So that dream was resurrected.
Okay.
So I applied to go to law school at the University of Minnesota. I was accepted. And of course, I was surprised I was
Yeah,
accepted.
okay.
I was accepted, and so I took a leave of absence from IBM
Mm-hmm.
to go to law school. And but the summer, 1974, law school would have started in September. God called me to preach in August,
Okay.
and so I was torn.
Yeah.
I was really torn. Here I have an opportunity to go through this open door, to do something I've always wanted to do,
Yeah.
growing up as a young kid, but God has called me to preach. So I told the Lord, I said, well, maybe I can just preach when I'm old.
Okay.
And I went on to law school anyways. And so that tension of following your own personal dream
Mm-hmm.
and doing what God called you to do, being obedient to God,
Right.
I didn't handle that tension very well.
Right.
And so at some point, after 2 years, something had to give.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had professors telling me at the law school, you need to go on and pursue ministry,
Okay.
I knew it was time to go.
Okay.
And so My grades have suffered a little bit because of my involvement with other ministry type organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I just decided that I would go ahead and leave law school, pursue the ministry, enroll in seminary,
Mm-hmm.
and then I returned back to my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
And after some years of study, that's when I started to plant churches.
Okay.
But the point is, I gave up on that dream.
That's right.
That dream was resurrected,
Right.
and I eventually pursued it, but I pursued the wrong dream.
Yeah.
The right dream was ministry,
Right.
be obedient to God.
What a story. Inspiring to me. I think I kind of walked along that path, and I did the opposite. I didn't be obedient. You were obedient, and you went with the calling it deep inside of you, and you followed that.
Yeah, but it wasn't an overnight process.
Yeah. Oh, no.
It was a real wrestling match.
Yeah.
And God won out.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. I've never asked you, Pastor, when he was talking about being a young man, I mean, other than ministry, and I know you coach football, what did you want to do when you were 18, 21? Was it sports still?
No. When I was in school, at first I hung out with the boys because I was an athlete.
Okay.
But when I graduated, I joined a group called Medical Explorers in Fayetteville. And I wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
And so when I went to undergraduate school, my dream was to be a doctor.
Okay.
And I kept saying, man, I want to be a doctor. But I kept enrolling in all these sports classes. I was like, what in the world is going on? Lo and behold, when I graduated, I did get admitted into medical school
Okay.
in California.
Mm.
But I also got admitted into Bowling Green. And I always tell folks that Bowling Green, Ohio, was my wilderness experience. My mother didn't have any money, so going to California to school or going to Bowling Green offered me money.
Okay.
And I needed the money to go to school. So when I went to Bowling Green, it was kind of interesting. There were quite a few people that befriended me, including a gentleman by the name of Dr. Tom Wright, who is now deceased. He was the head track coach at Bowling Green State University. Dr. Chuck Means, Dr. Winstone, and they just kind of took me in their wings. And as I sat one day, I heard God say to me, I got something for you. And I kind of laughed about it.
Okay.
And then I started meeting all these preachers. I met Pastor Jerry. I met Elder Pierre Taylor and Jack Taylor. And we all kind of hit off together. But I was trying to find a way to get away.
Okay.
And I'll never forget it. I was at a party one night in the Monty at Bowling Green State University. And everybody having a good time except me. I felt out of place. And I was like, what in the world going on? And so I got in the middle of a group of people, and wasn't nobody talking, but I could hear a voice talking. What are you doing here? And I was like, what are y'all talking about? And they were like, ain't none of us say nothing. And they said, where you going? I'm leaving here because I'm hearing things. Lo and behold, it was God trying to get me to do the right thing. And so I ended up meeting a friend of mine, Linwood Best, who you've already met.
Yes.
And I'd been with Pastor Jerry a couple of years. I'd been with Pierre Taylor a couple of years, been with Jack Taylor a couple of years, Pastor Donald Quincy Fozart a couple of years. And they asked me, they said, what do you think your calling is? I said, I'm just a teacher and a prophet. That was my way of getting out of it. The night that I preached my initial sermon at Mount Zion AME Church in Hillsboro, Linwood Best was there.
Wow.
And he didn't say anything to me. When we were all in a group laughing and joking, he said, yeah, a prophet and a teacher. What do you call yourself now? And so we've laughed about that over the years, but
Okay.
God has certainly had his hands on my life for years. But I'm gonna switch the subject a little bit. I'll switch the conversation because since I know Pastor Jerry real well, I'm gonna let him tell you about his struggles because I remember a story that he told me, and he'll start laughing when I tell him this. Pastor Jerry planted a church in Atlanta, Georgia. You remember that? Down in Georgia. And
Actually, my sister planted that church. I was just the overseer.
okay. And he was down there, and he said things got a little tough.
Okay.
He said things got a little tough. And his children were at the dinner table.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, you know, we had been doing pretty well, but it got a little tough and we didn't have the kind of food they were used to. He said, and one of his children asked him, Daddy, where's the meat? And he said, I'll meet you around the corner. And he said he thought about that. His daddy made that same statement when he was a little
My
boy.
daddy said the same thing to me, yes.
And so that has stuck with me.
And I thought I never wanted to do some things my dad did or say some things my dad said.
Right.
But when I was in a similar situation, there in Atlanta, Georgia, things were financially tight.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife would cook dinner, but we wouldn't have meat until the weekend. So one of the weekdays, we were sitting there at the dinner table, and like Pastor Larry said, one of my daughters said, well, Daddy, where's the meat? And before I could even think about it, I said, I'll meet you around the corner. And I said, oh my God, I'm just like my father.
Right.
And I didn't really want to be like my father,
Mm-hmm.
but I was like my father.
Wow. What a story. What a story. What I hear is for young people listening in the audience, I think it's something that you can take to heart in that, you know, never give up on your dreams.
That's right.
They're possible. If you give up, who else going to do it if you're not going to do it? So we have to keep pushing. And I think that's a message I would imagine you tell not just young people, but probably you share that with people everywhere you go, is to focus on that. Would that be true?
That is true. Now seasons do change,
Yes.
but your dream doesn't have to change.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to really give up on your dream because of a change of seasons. Seasons will change,
Mm-hmm.
but if you hold on to your dream, eventually your dreams will come true, particularly if you believe they're God-centered dreams. Now, if you're believing to do something that God has not called you to do,
Mm-hmm.
that's a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have this conviction in your heart that this is what God called me to do, this is what God has for me, this is the way God is leading me, then you never want to give up on that, notwithstanding what season you might be in,
Mm-hmm.
because that season will change, but that dream remains the same.
Right. For people that are grounded, they're in church, they have parents that take them to church, Sunday school, they have a chance to be introduced to God. And but for those people that are not grounded, you know, they might not know who God is, and they're caught up in the world. What do they do? What kind of message would you have? Would they even understand or hear your message that the path that you're choosing is not the right one? So how do you reach them? How do you inspire them to take a look at a godly path? What's your message to those people who are listening, who wonder sometimes who God is, and they're kind of caught up, you know, with Hollywood and the media, what they're doing, and they're convinced they're on the right track. They don't know another track, but the track that they're on. What do you say to those young minds?
Well, I think the message is you got to look outside of yourself and not just depend solely on yourself. We all need support systems.
Mhm.
I had a support system. Even though I grew up in a two-parent family, I still had coaches, mentors, people who took personal interest in me, and people that could help gauge my pursuit of whatever dream I thought was mine. These people, mentors, coaches, teachers, somehow they took a personal interest in not just me, but other people in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And they would pull you aside and say, they would challenge you. Why do you believe this? Why do you want this? Okay? here's what you need to do to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would challenge you about making different sacrifices if you want to get where you are to where you dream you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so the key for me was to have people, surround myself with people who served as a good support system, to not just be a sage on the stage, so to speak, but really a guide on the side, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I had people guiding me beyond my parents.
Mm-hmm.
I had coaches, teachers, and other members of the community that I had attached myself to.
Okay.
And so that was very helpful.
All right, but that's true. But what about in the time that we're living in now, especially now with the leadership that's about to take over in this country, when the Bible speak that when wrong is right and right is wrong, and we have leadership all across this nation who have adapted to that. People that we used to look up to, you hear them talk now. 10, 15 years ago, that conversation was different. Now, what are you talking about? What planet, that you go to and come back and left your mind there?
Yeah.
So what do people, what do they do right now when you don't know, when you don't know what the truth is, and our leaders don't know what the truth is? How can we turn that around as a people, as Christians? What do we do, in your opinion?
I think there's only one thing to do, and that's to really look to God, put your faith in God. And the Bible tells us that righteousness exalts a nation,
Mm-hmm.
but sin is a reproach to any people. It's just difficult to know in this day and this time, as you said, James, earlier, to your point, it's difficult to know what's really true.
Mm-hmm.
We have so much misinformation, disinformation, and people have to decide what they're going to believe. Many young people are on social media, and social media is flooded with misinformation, disinformation, but you're not unscathed to digest that kind of information daily. It's going to affect you,
Mm-hmm.
and more often than not, it's going to affect you in a negative way. And I think what we've seen recently in this country, in our most recent election, I think we've seen a lot of people that believe the lie rather than the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, to have the results that we just experienced with this election, it's a real head scratcher, because you ask yourself, how's it that somebody chooses a particular person over morality,
Mm-hmm.
a particular person over character, or a particular person over true faith in God and being a doer of His word. And for me, those are all deal breakers for me.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was saying to Pastor Larry earlier, the candidate that won, he may or may not have good policies, but I could never get to that point
Right.
to evaluate his policies, because I'd already evaluated his lack of morality, lack of character. And for me, as a believer, that would be inconsistent to support anyone like that,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of their policy.
Right. Right. And common sense, they do background checks. People, you can deny a job opportunity check the box. No way, out of here. You'll never work here.
Yeah.
And that didn't apply to this situation.
Did not apply at all.
Rachel,
Hi.
we have, I tell you, you had a chance to listen to the last few seconds. And as a young, brilliant mind like yourself, what's something that you would like to ask Dr. Williams?
Sure. So, just going back to speaking on the young people and their walk with Christ. So I feel like today we live in a world where people just want to feel like they belong. And I feel like one of the biggest struggles for young people when it comes to their walk with Christ, especially for me personally, is losing friends. Like that's really hard. So I guess what advice would you give somebody who is sort of hesitant about that aspect of it, like losing friends who may not be ready to go on that journey?
Okay. Losing friends because they're not ready to go on the journey of walking with Christ.
Correct.
Okay. That's a difficult thing for a young person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because you know, we've all been young once, all of us. And young people, they have a need to want to be loved
Belong.
and accepted, to
Absolutely.
belong. And so that's difficult when you decide as a young person that you're going to live for Christ. But that means losing or alienate good friends. That could be painful. It could be depressing. It could bring loneliness. It could bring other challenges. And I don't really know what the answer to that is, okay, other than trust God on your journey.
Right.
And believe God to bring like-minded friends into your life. And one of the promises in the Bible is that God said, I'll be a mother to you, I'll be a father, but God can also be a friend to a young person. Okay? And so I don't think the only answer is, as a young person, my friends outside of Christ is my only alternative for friendship and fellowship. I don't think that's the only answer. I think that the same way you decided to walk this journey, there's other people like you.
Right.
It's just a matter of time God bringing them into your life and bringing them into your sphere, your circle. But I think that it's difficult, but it's not impossible because with faith, all things are possible. And I think that young people would have to believe God the same way that older people have to believe God. And if you're serious about your walk with Christ, then I think you trust Him for whatever you need, whether it's a friend or whether it's something else. Now, my grandchildren, they go to Christian schools, so they don't have that challenge that a lot of young people have who may be in a non-Christian setting, and they decide they want to follow Christ, and they look around, and they've been alienated by their so-called friends. And so it's a little more difficult if you're in a secular environment already versus being in a quote-unquote Christian environment. It makes it a little easier for those children. But it's a real problem nonetheless.
Yeah, and to further that, I think a lot of times, you know, I'm pretty much into a lot of psychological stuff. So when I think about that, I think my mind immediately goes to Abraham Maslow and that hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
And down at the bottom of the hierarchy of needs, if you look at the table that we have, down at the one side of the table has a long base, but at the top it narrows. And it's in a day and age of social media where everything is live stream, everything is sent to you. It's a little different than when, for instance, Pastor Jerry and I grew up, and we had to walk to get to what we needed. Now you don't have to walk to get to what you need. Some stuff can be sent to you from Amazon. You order it tonight, and it's here tomorrow morning.
And we have to go to the library to get information.
That's right. And now you have an information highway. And so you have to decide which direction you're going to go. And when you're making that decision, you know, I always look at that need to belong. Yes, I need friends. But the question becomes, at what cost am I going to pick those friends? You know, one of the things, and Pastor Jerry talked about his grandchildren, and I always talk about my children, because my son and I, and he'll tell you, we were like peas in a pod. If I went somewhere, if you looked in the car, you saw him sitting there. But one of the things that I convinced him was there was never going to be anybody that had your back or cared for you more than I did. And I can show you that I care for you. But one of the things that we have to do is we have to get out of this generation of where parents want to be friends.
Right.
You know, you can't be a friend and a parent. The two don't coincide. You can tell your child that you care for them, but then when they're looking at social media and they see all these things going on, you have to scrutinize the channels that are coming into your house, because the devil will use anything that he can to get to your child or to get to you. And you have, the old saying, choose you this day whom you'll serve. But as for me and my house, I'm going to serve the Lord. It's a little different now because of social media. When everything's broadcasted, whether, I remember growing up, TV went off at 11:30.
He don't mean cutting the power off.
No.
That's not what he's talking
TV
about.
went off at 11:30. It wasn't until I got to graduate school that I found out that TV stayed on all night. But what I'm trying to get you to understand is, as a young person, you're going to have to make some personal choices about the people that are around you. And you have to ask yourself 3 questions. What does this person bring to our relationship as friends? What am I going to get out of this relationship with them in my life? And thirdly, as a group, is this productive or counterproductive with me being around this group? And the answers that you get are always going to be right in front of you. The real challenge is accepting the answer that you get.
That makes good sense, and I think too that all of us are born with an inner voice. Right and wrong is built. It's there. It's pre-programmed, but we don't listen. We shut it down, and we get overwhelmed with social media, with the news, with celebrities and superstars in Hollywood and money. And we focus on things, and we shut down that voice, and we don't let it guide us. It could really, that spirit within us, if we could learn to listen. But I think we've forgotten how to do that. And our mind is overloaded with surviving and having fun and having the next thing that the neighbor has. But I think we got to find a way to trust that inner spirit within us to help us make better decisions. And I don't know if enough people are doing that right now. Our minds are filled with so much other stuff.
I think that's easier to be said and done with adults.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about
Children.
young people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Young people are up against a lot.
A lot.
There's a lot of competing forces out there.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned some things about social media, but I think young people have a lot more to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I go back to my original point that even young people have to trust God, send them like-minded friends.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And when you talk about like-minded friends, will the things that we're doing build me up, or will it put me behind bars? And I have some friends who they have great professions, but their children couldn't make the delineation between choosing their friends. And so the question became, if you're going to live in this house, you can't put our family in harm's way. And those are some of the things that as young folks, you have to make up your mind which direction you're going to go.
I agree.
And when it comes to, let's see, what's the best way to do this? Parenting. We're talking about that indirectly and directly, being a good parents. But for the parents that are watching, we've already discussed it's not a wise decision to be your kid's friend. That somebody's got to lay down the law.
Mm-hmm.
But some parents are much younger than they used to be. Grandmamas in their 20s. So who's raising who? Sometimes, when I was involved in the school system, the teachers would be confused when you just think that because a parent is a parent, it's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
The parents don't know anything. Nobody's taught them anything because they're so young. And they was raised up in environments where right and wrong wasn't important. And it's just survival. but they're still parents. How can we help that group of people? What do we do?
Children raising children,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, I think there has to be an understanding of the generational differences. Like I'm a baby boomer. My children are millennials, and even with my children, my children are all in the faith. They all love God, but they still have different values when it comes to child rearing and relating to children, their children, than my wife and I have with how we approach them and related to them. And so I don't think we're going to be able to help anyone until we have some understanding that they're of a different generation than we are. And they're going to have different values than we have. And so somehow we have to try to reconcile those differences and meet that person where they are. And so I think the way you help them is you accept them the way they are.
Okay.
Not try to change them,
Okay.
but accept them where they are. And you embrace them. You love them. And we call it unconditional love and acceptance. But you can't help people that you're sort of ostracizing or pushing away at the same time.
Right.
And because our values are different, if we insist on doing things our way or the highway, our way only, then I think it makes it more difficult to even relate to people, to make a connection to help people. Because you're not going to be able to help anybody if they won't listen to you.
That's right.
And so it has to be an appreciation, not only of your values and your generation, but it has to be appreciation about where they are, even though your assessment might be they're children raising children, they don't know anything. Okay? I think if we approach them that way, we continue to alienate them and push them away, and we're not helping them
Right.
or the situation. And so I think the bottom line is it goes back to communication.
Yeah.
Okay? It's how you talk to the
Talk
other
to 'em.
person.
Yeah. And love will go a lot longer and a lot deeper than coming off the hard way that some people do. You know what I mean? And accepting people where they are. That is so powerful.
And you know, one of the things, and Pastor Jerry has probably been there as a pastor, when you find a young lady or a young man that make a mistake, the first thing that some of us will say is they need to be put out.
Right.
Well, the real truth is they don't need to be put out. They need to be nurtured and cared for, as Pastor Jerry said, where they are. Because if I don't know any better, I can't do any better.
That's right.
But if I put you out, it's certainly not going to get any better. And so what has to happen is I have to embrace you where you are. And when I embrace you where you are, that goes a long ways. You know, I remember my days as a high school principal. I had a family, and I'm not going to call any names, but I put the young man out of school. And everybody in the community was hollering, well, you know, you shouldn't have put him out. I said, well, you know, the rule says this. But you put him out. I said, well, you know, he has the option to come back next year. But for this year, I got to follow the rule. Well, long story short, some 10 or 15 years passed. I was on Duke University's campus, and I'm walking to get some lunch because we're in the middle of graduation for Durham Public Schools, and I was in charge of graduation. And I saw the young man coming, and the guy that was walking with me said, that young man looked like he know you. And I said, yeah, he know me. He know me real well. And so he walked up to me, grabbed me, hugged me, and he said, you know what? I said, what is it? He said, all of the stuff that you did, I thought you were just being hard. He said, but I found out that you really cared about me. He said, I got one request. I said, what's your request? Can you help me raise my son like you raised me? I said, you know, my child rearing days are over. I don't have the patience that I used to have. I said, but at the same time, I will talk to your son. And he said, I've been telling my son about you. And so when the young man left, the gentleman that was with me said, you put him out, and he come and hug you as if you did something good. I said, I did put him out, but every year I brought him back. I said, I brought him back with the understanding that he wouldn't commit the same crime. And he said, what do you mean the same crime? He was going to do something. I just didn't want him to do the same thing. I wanted him to learn. And that's what we have to deal with our children. We have to understand they're going to do some things, but are they learning from their experiences? And are we trying to teach them a positive and showing them, as Pastor Jerry said, morality, character? Are we showing that to them? Because you'll find a lot of times when our children are going astray, they didn't get it in the street.
That's right.
They got it from us.
Yeah. I had a similar situation
Mm-hmm.
to Pastor Larry's point that he was making about the young man when he put out of school. My oldest son had a very troubled youth upbringing. Always in and out of the best school, suspended, expelled. And so we were very tough on him. And I was very tough on him as a father because I wanted the best for my son.
Mm-hmm.
And I never forget after he was had moved out the house, and he was living in Atlanta. We were living in Minnesota. We flew down one weekend just to visit him, and we decided to go bowling. And he's just weeping, just tears streaming on his face. I said, "What's going on? What's wrong?" He said, "Dad, I just want to thank you." He said, "I didn't understand when I was growing up." He said, "I thought you were always too hard on me. You were always punishing me." But he says, "I thank you for doing what you did because it made me the man I am today." He said, "I didn't see it then, but I see it now." And so that's basically what the young man was saying to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it makes a big difference because a lot of times with young folks, you know, I go back to David. David declared, I've been young and now I'm old. I've never seen the righteous forsaken nor his seed begging bread. In other words, David was saying, when I was coming down the street, I didn't see what I'm seeing going back down the street. And a lot of times as young folks, it's not until we've gotten down the street and we're in the predicament that we're in that we can see what we thought was bad that was good for us, but we didn't want to accept it at the time.
Yeah, sometimes it takes falling in the ditch or the pit before you ever look up.
That's right.
And so, but it's better late than never.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I got one more question. We got a few minutes left, but given the current time, we touched on it a little bit, you know, the crazy future that might be ahead. What are people to do? How do we navigate this if things do take a turn and become crazy? I know trusting in God in prayer and seeking Him first for guidance, but the Christian people, what do we need to do as a church of people, you know, the Christian community, God-fearing? What should be our plan of action moving forward to deal with the potential chaos that could be ahead? What would you say to the people here in America?
I would say that even though this man is your president, Jesus is still your king. And we need to look to him. And of course, you mentioned some of the things, trusting God, praying, but we look to him. But the way we look to him is not only on our knees in prayer, but it's how we support one another, how we build community. Because it's gonna take very strong community to survive what we think may be coming in
Mhm.
the next 4 years. So this is not just something we do as an individual out of our own self-interest, but we have to look at the big picture. What's going to happen to us as a people? What's
Mhm.
going to happen to us as a community? And I think we have to build that. And I think the local church has a role in that. Parents have a role in that. Community leaders have a role in that. But I think it's something that is not going to happen because we do nothing. It's going to happen because we're proactive, not only in terms of our faith, but in terms of us coming together as a community.
Mhm. And I think now, just like you mentioned, we need to start doing something now. I get different news feeds where people like indicating that this guy duped us. He lied to us. I can't believe we wish we hadn't voted for him. That's already coming out in the news where people are feeling betrayed already. And we hadn't even got started yet. So we got to get started, just like you said, preparing for craziness and really be committed to trusting one another and build that bond to endure what is to come, whatever it is.
Well, I haven't heard many people express regret just yet.
Yeah.
But you know, the Bible does tell us that there will come a day where men will choose to believe a lie rather than the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So even if there are some that are saying that this guy duped us, he betrayed us,
Yes.
there was something there that they wanted to believe as well.
Right.
And so
Right.
they have to really be honest about that and do some
Soul searching.
real deep soul searching.
Right.
There was something else there that you wanted,
Mm-hmm.
you thought you would get, in order for you to have bit the lie, ate that lie, hooked, you know, how do you say it when you go fishing? Line, hook, and sinker.
Fine. Yeah. Yeah. It was in that news feed. It was the Arab community up in Michigan that 110,000 people who was
Yes.
like, what? And now they're like, oh my God.
Well, I think with the Arab community, particularly in Dearborn, Michigan area, that was more of a protest
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
against the Biden administration policies, Kamala Harris's stance on the Israel-Gaza issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought that she could have been stronger on that as well.
Right.
But you know, politicians have to walk that fine line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you say you don't support Israel, then you're going to lose the Jewish community.
That's right.
You're going to lose their vote. Then if you say I believe in the Palestinians, people in Gaza, I believe that their suffering is their suffering needs to be eased some kind of way. Then you offend some other groups.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you say, well, what about a two-state solution? Then there's some people that don't want a two-state
Don't want that.
solution. Okay, and so politicians have to thread that needle,
Mm-hmm.
walk that fine line, but in doing so, you risk paying a great price.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that the candidate who just lost the election has paid a great price.
And when you think about the whole kit and caboodle, if you studied well enough, you'd understand that this goes back to Jacob and Esau.
That's right.
This is a battle that started in their mother's womb,
Mm-hmm.
and when they got old enough, they continued it. Even to the point when Jacob came home, he sent his wife and his children ahead of the crowd
That's right.
because he was too scared to face his brother.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing is still happening in the same part of the land. The area didn't change. The names may have changed, but the area didn't change. And so what we have to do, as Pastor Jerry said, we've got to come together. You know, I remember something that T.D. Jakes said years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I don't understand how two alcoholics can come together and drink out of the same wine bottle. Two drug addicts can come together
Mhm.
and use the same hypodermic needle.
Mhm.
He said, but the body of Christ can't come together over the blood of Jesus.
Mm.
And that's still true today. We'll fight over baptism, sprinkling, speaking in tongues. We'll fight over everything in the church as opposed to coming together and talking about one Lord, one faith,
One baptism.
and one baptism.
And what's more important? I would say the latter than the former.
That's right.
Rachel, you had the opportunity to listen, and as a young person, if you were to do a summary of what you've heard so far from this great leader of God, what would you take back to a group of young people, the next conversation that you would want to share from this meeting with them?
Overall, I would say, well, the first point I would make is that mentorship is so important. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, I feel like majority of the people learn better from experience.
Mhm.
And if you see somebody or you have somebody in your life who is, you know, walking the walk you want to walk, or they're in a position that you want to be in one day, like, you know, talk to them and communicate with them, get to know them, you know, align yourself with them and, you know, what they're doing and stuff like that. I feel like that's so important. And the second I would say is, you know, look to God.
Mhm.
You know, like, look to God for everything. Like, God is the answer to everything. That would be the two major points. You know, I would say for sure.
Those are two good points.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Very good point. I would say this discussion has been successful based on those 2 points because
She listened well.
she indeed.
Very
And-
attentive.
And based on those 2 points, I'll give you the last final words of encouragement to anybody in the audience. From your point of view, your world travels, and I guess you kind of soaking up what we brought to the table tonight. How would you summarize for the listening audience? Like, hey, these are some things you might want to focus on as a Christian, as a non-Christian. You know, find a church. You know, let's stick together. What would that message be?
Well, the things we've talked about, the issues that have been raised, they're not unique just to us here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
People face the same issue, have the same challenges. In Ghana, where I've been, Sierra Leone, Kenya, Panama, people have the same needs and desires.
Mm-hmm.
And people still have dreams, and not just the American dream. But the thing I would say is, and I go back to one of my favorite passages in the Bible, from Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6. You trust in the Lord with all your heart. What
Mhm.
better advice can you give a young person?
That's right.
Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But in all your ways, you acknowledge Him, and He directs your path. That scripture got me through college, got me through where I am today.
Mm-hmm.
Just trusting in God and believing that God's already worked it out. And there's nowhere I can go that God hasn't gone before me. And so what's happening today, God is preparing me for what's in store tomorrow.
Awesome. There's nothing else to say right there. That's
Yeah,
it.
that was
That's
good.
it.
That's it. And again, the show is coming to the end, and we're going to sign off. And I just want to thank you. This has been informative for me, encouraging. And Rachel, would you agree with that,
Absolutely.
Pastor?
Yes.
And
Always.
Always.
Well, I hope you enjoyed being with us. We certainly enjoyed having you
I
here.
did, and thank you for having me.
Okay, sir. So that's another conclusion of the Journey of the Overcomers, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with a new guest. We'll put it on our website who that's going to be. So thank you for tuning in. Be sure to like our show and share and let people know there's some good things going on the Journey of the Overcomers podcast. So thank you for watching, and good night.
Good night.